In 2004, the average person could focus on one screen for about 2.5 minutes before switching to something else. Today, 47 seconds. That's not a typo. That's a real number from a researcher who tracked people's actual device usage for over a decade. Your attention span didn't just get shorter, and it got cut to less than a third of what it used to be, and almost nobody noticed it happening. Here's the scarier part. You open your phone to check one notification, 10 seconds in and out. 40 minutes later, you look up and genuinely cannot tell anyone what you just watched. You didn't choose that. Nobody sits down and consciously decides to lose 40 minutes in a blur they can't remember. So here's the question I want you to sit with for this whole video. If you can't remember the last 40 minutes of your own life, whose life is it actually? My name is Mark, and I spend a lot of time thinking about how the human brain decides what deserves its attention and who's currently deciding that for you. If you sit down to do one task and somehow surface 2 hours later, having done six unrelated things, subscribe and hit like if this helps you understand your own head. Here's the thing, when people can't focus anymore, the go to explanation is always the same. I just have no willpower. I'm lazy. I need more discipline. I want to challenge that immediately because it lets the actual cause completely off the hook. Willpower isn't the variable that changed here. What changed is the environment your brain operates in, deliberately engineered by some of the smartest behavioral scientists on the planet to be as hard to look away from as possible. Gloria Mark at UC Irvine tracked real device usage for over 15 years and found the average time people focus on one screen before switching has dropped from about 2.5 minutes in 2004 to roughly 47 seconds today. Worse, once interrupted, it takes over 23 minutes to fully return to that depth of focus. Check a notification every 10 minutes, and you are mathematically never returning to full depth on anything. And here's the part that should really worry you. This isn't happening by accident. Somewhere, a room full of behavioral scientists sat down and asked, how do we make sure that happens? What they built is sitting in your pocket right now. And let's get into the hard science. Every time you check your phone and something new shows up, your brain releases a small hit of dopamine. Here's what most people don't realize. Dopamine isn't the pleasure chemical people love to call it. Neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz at Cambridge showed that dopamine fires most strongly, not when you get a reward, but when a reward is uncertain. It's not a pleasure signal, it's an anticipation signal. Here's the counterintuitive part. You're not addicted to the reward. You're addicted to not knowing what the reward is. That distinction is the entire business model of every app on your home screen. This is the same mechanism that makes slot machines effective, tracing back to psychologist B.F. Skinner's discovery of variable ratio reinforcement in the 1950s. Reward a behavior on a predictable schedule, and it stays resistant to becoming compulsive. Reward it unpredictably, and the behavior becomes almost impossible to stop. The uncertainty itself is what hooks the brain. And that's exactly what happens every time you pull to refresh an app that was already fully loaded. A 1950s pigeon experiment, now running in your pocket thousands of times a day. Former Facebook president Sean Parker admitted in a 2017 interview that the platform's early growth strategy was explicitly built around the question, how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible? He described the like button and notification system as deliberately exploiting what he called a vulnerability in human psychology. That's one of the people who built the system, on record describing exactly what it was designed to do. Now you might be thinking, why does this work on me at all? Here's a question that sounds unrelated, but isn't. Why does checking your phone feel almost exactly like the urge to open the fridge when you're not even hungry? Turns out, it's the same ancient circuit, just with different bait. Researchers studying information foraging theory found that humans allocate attention using a cost-benefit calculation borrowed from foraging behavior. Keep gathering from this patch or move to a new one that might be better. For most of human history, new patches were expensive to find. You had to physically walk somewhere else. That cost kept this system in check automatically for 300,000 years. It disappeared completely about 15 years ago. Evolution has had zero time to catch up. Now a new patch is one thumb flick away at zero cost, and your foraging brain is firing constantly because of it. Psychologist Jonathan Haidt described the mind as split into two parts, a small rational rider and a massive, powerful elephant. The rider can hold the reins. But if the elephant decides it wants to go toward a novel, unpredictable reward, the rider has almost no power to stop it. Every time you tell yourself, I'll just check it for a second, that's your rider talking. But the elephant has spent 20 years being trained by some of the best behavioral engineers in the world to walk toward exactly this stimulus. The fight isn't close. The cost of switching attention isn't just the time you lose in the moment, it's the residue that stays behind. Organizational psychologist Sophie Leroy found that when you switch from an unfinished task to a new one, part of your cognitive resources stay stuck on the first task, even while you're trying to focus on the second. Your performance measurably suffers because a portion of your brain is still quietly chewing on the thing you didn't finish. Here's the math that should bother you. 10 seconds checking a message doesn't cost you 10 seconds. It costs you the message, plus 23 minutes to refocus, plus a residue that quietly drags down everything you do in between. 10 seconds of input for nearly an hour of lost output. That's the actual exchange rate. Layer the biology on top of this. Chronic task switching keeps your body in a mildly elevated stress state through your HPA axis, the same system that releases cortisol, measurably higher than sustained single task focus, even at identical workload. So here's the part that gives this video its title. Every mechanism we just covered keeps getting more optimized every year because these companies use machine learning to personalize what shows up next with more precision than ever. Counterintuitive claim, the 47-second attention span isn't the bottom, it's a snapshot taken mid-fall, and the system driving that number down has more data on you today than it did yesterday. Here's what actually helps, and it's not just delete the apps, or that ignores everything we just covered about how deeply this is wired into your reward circuitry. First, environmental design instead of willpower design. Instead of relying on the rider to overpower the elephant through discipline, change the environment so the elephant never gets pointed at the temptation. Physically remove your phone from the room during focus blocks, not just silence it. Research on brain drain found a phone's mere presence, even face down, even silenced, measurably reduces available cognitive capacity because part of your brain is still tracking it. Quick gut check. Is your phone within arm's reach right now while you're watching this? Second, protect against attention residue by closing tasks properly instead of abandoning them mid-thought. Briefly writing down your next concrete step before switching tasks, a ready-to-resume plan, significantly reduces the residue effect. It gives your brain permission to let go because it has an external record instead of needing to hold the thread internally. Third, and this is the one people resist most, reintroduce boredom on purpose. Deliberately scheduling short windows with zero stimulation retrains your baseline tolerance for the absence of novelty. This isn't about punishing yourself, it's about giving your foraging brain evidence that patches don't need to be checked every 90 seconds to stay safe. Look, what frustrates me about how this gets talked about online is that it's framed as a personal failing, like the 40 minutes you lost scrolling says something about your character. It doesn't. Your evolutionary reward system, built for a world of scarce and effortful novelty, is now facing the most sophisticated attention capture technology ever built, tested on billions of users, refined continuously for over a decade. You are not weak. You're running 21st century software on hardware that's a couple 100,000 years old in an environment engineered to find and exploit the gaps between the two. So here's the mental shift I want you to walk away with. The goal isn't superhuman willpower, and that's a fight you were never built to win through force alone. The actual goal is to change the environment so the fight barely needs to happen. Phone out of the room, tasks closed properly before you switch, deliberate windows of boredom. Last one, right now, without checking, do you know how many times you've unlocked your phone today? Most people are off by more than double when they guess. That gap between what you think you do and what you actually do is exactly where this entire video lives. Tell me in the comments, what's the one app or habit that eats the most unaccounted for time in your day? And have you ever actually tried removing it from the room instead of just trying to ignore it? And if you want the next video where we build a distraction-proof workspace step by step, subscribe so you don't miss it. I'll see you in the next one.